students of Reddit, if you were put in charge of the education system, what would be the first thing you'd do? Not start classes at 7:30 in the morning for high school students, which seems to be widespread in the US. I get that the bus schedule needs to be staggered so that the youngest students get to school for 9 or so. So I don't have a real solution. But getting ready for school at the crack of dawn can't be that helpful for learning. Especially if students are working on homework until late. This has been the single best thing about online schooling for my 13-year-old. School starts at 8:51, so she now wakes up at 8:30 instead of at 6:45 to catch a 7:15 bus. She's getting A+ in everything. And keeping up extracurriculars. And is still pleasant to be around. I'm 100% convinced it's a result of getting her sleep. So proud of her. Change it so property taxes isn't what funds schools. People often talk about what makes a lot of European schools better than American ones. They talk about shorter school days, funding for arts, no standardized testing, smaller class sizes, higher teacher pay and all sorts of things. But two things they rarely bring up for Nordic schools is that each school gets the same amount of funding from the national government and there aren't a lot of private schools. Because of this, poorer neighborhoods still get lots of funding and rich families have a strong incentive to make sure the schools are great. Zero tolerance policy. Take bullying seriously. IDK about schools everywhere else, but in the UK bullying is almost never punished and it does lead to a lot of students struggling with depression. What I don't understand, and I keep seeing so many stories and anecdotes of this being the case, is how a kid can be bullied for a long time, months or even years. And despite talking to teachers, staff like they're supposed to, nothing is really done. Until the bullied kid stands up for themselves. And only then does the hammer of the F-King law come slamming down. After begging for help from adults. After their parents demand that the administration do something. After all the sheer apathetic inactivity. It takes the bullied kid fighting back one time for the teacher to suspend, or even expel, both kids. Or just the one who's been getting bullied in some extreme cases. Like just. F-King, why wasn't this kind of reaction available at the start for the victim? Bring back good food for school lunches to boost morale on school. Drop subsidized testing and put in extra subjects to actually help people. Cooking. Finance class. Mechanics class. Home ec and cooking class. Ect. Give kids skills they will use daily as adults instead of a bunch of useless facts to memorize. Math. Reading and writing are important and so is history. But folks need to learn how to manage their daily adult lives too. Removed standardized testing. I would weep with joy if they would just end standardized testing. In my state, there is no modified version of the STAR, our version of standardized testing, for special needs students who end up having to take whether they can possibly pass or not. Think lower functioning students for whom school is less about actually learning stuff and more about respite care for their parents. Getting rid of useless, mandatory subjects. Bring back shop classes and the arts. First of all, they can teach you useful life skills like how to wire something. Second, these offer alternate paths for people who are legitimately not the college type and gives them a reason to stay in school, i.e. Jim is okay in math and English but absolutely excels in wood shop. He has decided to join an apprentice program to be a carpenter. A well-paying job. For the college-bound kid, it opens their eyes to different concepts and possibilities, i.e. because Mike took music classes. He was introduced to guitar and is now majoring in musical theory. I gotta say, as a teacher I agree with all of these. We've been fighting for these kinds of reforms for years. Young people, get out there and vote when you can. Don't forget what a bullshit system this is and pay attention to elections in your local board of education. Keep fighting even when it's someone else's problem. Pay teachers much more and just generally try to ensure that there are actually good or at least decent teachers who know what they're doing. Don't hate kids and are not doing it just because they weren't accepted anywhere else. Teachers, the good ones who actually care, deserve the world. I would also love them to have some basic psychology training. I'm pretty sure they should have that already. But it certainly doesn't seem like it a lot of the time. Also, I would like there to be more focus on actually practical things, like taxes and finances in general. Writing academic papers and doing correct citations. Public speaking. Researching things correctly and working with information. Writing on computer with all fingers. First aid. I want decent glue sticks. In my school, all the glue sticks feel like they came from a 20-pack from Poundland. Imagine the cheapest glue possible. It's terrible. Whoa. That's sad. In my school, we have a glue stick that's stuck to the ceiling. And it's the highest ceiling in the school. We should definitely have decent supplies for all schools. Put more emphasis on mental health. This is probably one of the biggest problems. And no one is doing much about it. Mental health matters. I would love to learn subjects that actually interest me. The fact that I'd be so fascinated by dissecting a frog and I'm a junior in high school and will never get that experience hurts. Most importantly, subjects that actually matter. Teach me how to do my damn taxes. Teach me how to handle my future finances. Come on. Don't be shy. Strangely enough, you are going to find that out of any subject. Literacy is most useful for taxes. There is no possible way to teach you the specific guidelines for your career and earning potential 10 years down the track when certain laws have changed. So the most we can do as teachers is to explain percentages and the basic concept and then make sure you are well equipped enough to be able to read and discern which information is relevant to you. For example, is this a government document or a paid site? Which deductions apply to me this year? What is this tax document asking me to do? Close bracket. Without higher literacy, your future is severely impacted when dealing with contracts, laws or new chunks of information. Being a capable reader allows you to do things like identify clauses in contracts that are against your best interest. Being a capable student of maths allows you to do things like compare home loan rates over the years, work out credit card payments if you have a balance owing, or budget appropriately for a new TV, but there are also calculators that will help you do so, as long as you are capable of discerning the correct information to input. Make school more comfortable. If I'm not wrong, they are making the chairs not comfy so you don't sleep or whatsoever in the school, but I think it makes it worse when a school makes you feel like you are in a dentist room and makes you wanna leave. Schools should feel like home. They also need to vary desk size by student size. As a relatively tall student who has to lean in close to my paper due to vision issues, my back has taken an absolute beating in these tiny one-size-fits-all desks. Start class later. Okay, so this might seem like we are being lazy or something, but really it's not. It's scientifically proven that our brains go into sleep mode later than adults and we need more sleep. The tenuous amount of homework I get keeps me up past 12 sometimes, and it doesn't help that in class I struggle in like math or science. I can't get proper help without having even more work put onto my shoulders. I think the amount of work they give us is unfair, considering that I also have no free periods during school to try and work on homework. And when I'm home, I don't want to spend my time on calculus or biology or writing essays. I hate the subjects of. Not only that, but it's been shown that the time kids get into the most trouble is between the time they get home and the time their parents get off work. This is where the term 4:20 comes from. 'Cause kids smoke pot at 4:20 p.m. So what some school districts do is have kids get to school at 7 and get home around 2:00 p.m. or 2:30 p.m. when we know this is the worst time of the day for them to get into trouble. I don't understand it. Make it so that students can choose what they have to study. The only requirement should be that you're working on studying something. Tests would only be done so teachers could assess what you need more guidance on. There would be no grades. Schools would have the funding they need so that students could do a lot more hands-on learning. If a student wants to learn about rockets, then let them learn about rockets. If they want to learn about dinosaurs, let them learn about dinosaurs. Our current education system is great at teaching students that education is boring and creativity is useless. And this is completely wrong. Schools need to teach kids that learning is fun. And that creativity is what's most important. Make mandatory and interesting classes in critical thinking, household economics, basic understanding of science, food and the human body, and remove all religious sentiment in the schools. Shorter school days. More creative and practical options for students who want to stay after the mandatory classes. Make school a fun and engaging place. Critical thinking should be part of every class. It is often neglected in STEM. It doesn't have to be. Teachers need to be more creative with their line of questioning. Unfortunately, it would take longer to grade than multiple choice regurgitation. It's all about asking real-world questions that you may not know the answer to but require the knowledge you are looking to evaluate. I had a ruminant nutrition teacher like this in college. For instance, a question might be, what would happen to cows rumen in space? There is no direct right answer. It's all about using the comprehensive knowledge you have about a topic and try to apply it to an unknown situation. 4-day week. Or at least FCK homework or make it optional. I don't live for school. I live for me. You can't punish me for that. Homework is bullshit. It's an inequitable practice that assumes all kids have the same time and resources at home. It punishes the kids who work to support their families. And rewards the rich kid with 3 different tutors. I would make sure they don't fill younger kids' heads with crap. Christopher Columbus discovered America and is a hero. Leif Erikson was the first European to set foot on North America. Where the FCK are they still calling Columbus a hero? In my experience, he was always just taught as an explorer that did some terrible things and also happened to be the first in a major wave of explorers that would lead to the eventual colonization of the Americas. Create a class period where students work on projects that can be whatever they want. They can ask for school's teachers' help. They put their time and energy and brain towards whatever they're passionate about. Any child's parent that starts a social campaign or gets on social media to try to overrule school admin's decisions or to bully the school to change their mind would be banned from school grounds indefinitely. If it happens again, then their child would have to go to another school. My friend is an assistant principal and his exact words: "These kids are doomed." These parents won't allow any discipline against their children. And all they have to do is jump on social media and tell a different story and strong arm us to letting their kid back in. I personally would put mental health as a priority first. Because we don't get help with it. And we're not taught how to deal with it. After that, we could focus on what students and teachers think needs to be improved. Like what should be taught, how we're treated, and the ridiculous rules that are mainly used for control. 1. Actually tech things that kids will need in their life, such as personal survival, even for those not doing GCSE pay. How the world works, like how the economy works. How big companies keep you in the system, etc. 2. Push back school start to 10 and extend it till 4:30 as a vast majority of high school students suffer from a lack of sleep. 3. Schools shouldn't be so strict on how pupils wear their hair. For example, boys shouldn't have to have short hair, and if they want to they could grow it slightly longer. Not super confident on details. Haven't done much research. But I think the first step would be to reevaluate funding to determine how best to reach the most kids. My next thought would something along the lines of changing the curriculum to be more consistent and better targeted to help students following high school. First thing I would do is a crap ton of research. I'd want to make sure I have a really good picture of what improvements can be made before I do much beyond general stuff. My biggest priority would be reorganizing the whole education system so that each student is able to 1. Learn and advance at the pace best suited for them. 2. Find their talents and preferences so they can best develop them. 3. Learn important general real-life skills at appropriate times, ranging from managing finances to managing emotion stress. Funding. Hold charter and private schools to the same standards as public. Pay teachers more. Change school times for later. High school have specialized classes for jobs most likely to start what their interest lies. Teach adult life like taxes. cooking, and others. Colleges have a lot of funding but aren't performing better for it. You're not necessarily wrong, but the way money is spent is at least as important. Administrative bloat is already a problem in public schools. Teachers should have mental health training. All throughout school I was painfully shy. Barely spoke to anyone. Really bad anxiety around it, and this was absolutely noticed by the teachers because at parents' evenings they would always comment on how I needed to speak up more but offered absolutely no support. My parents didn't believe it was a big issue as they hadn't witnessed it, so didn't do anything. I was 17 when a teacher finally tried to intervene and told my parents I needed help. I wish that had happened sooner. The 2 years folks waste in college for general studies would be gone. I'd have all that integrated into the high school system. College would be a 2-3 year crash course on the student's desired field of study if they desired to go. High school would have the general studies ideas and concepts integrated so that students are more prepared coming out of high school. Just my opinion. Have it so grade school is founded on skills for memory and thinking. And focus education for 6th grade up. I relearned American and European history 4 times. That's pointless. I would also have paths for students to go down. So one student could go down a trade path while another can go down a medical path. Also have job showing programs. Also finance. Basic home maintenance and repairs class. More teacher pay. No more homework. And give students more of a choice about what they learn. Elementary school you is the same. Middle school you get slightly more choice. High school you get a lot of choice. And then college you get the most choice. In college if you are studying to be in cybersecurity for example, you don't have to do history or English. But you have to do math that applies. Also I would make college cost a lot less. Provide meals. Basic medical services. Financial advice and counseling. Especially for nursing students. I'm doing my degree and I haven't had a chance to get to a government facility to get my eyes checked. This due to being at clinicals a lot of the time. Make philosophy, epistemology and religious history core curriculum classes. K-12. During the age of AI-led echo chambers the public perception of objective truth has become subjective. Depends on what kind of student. Thinking back to my school days and about how I want to become a teacher, I'd invest a lot of money into the teaching staff and make the decision makers accountable for resource planning, which they at least in Germany FCK up on a regular basis. I'd make comparable high school degrees in all states mandatory and hire competent curriculum planners in place of political dinguses. Writing this as a university student, I'd make universities accountable for 1. Shitty teaching and 2. Shitty advice. Since universities want to fill their courses, they regularly tempt students to enlist in bogus studies claiming that you can do anything with a bachelor's degree, which usually means that you can drive a cab. Also I would undo the Bologna reform and get rid of the bachelor's degree at least in quite a few disciplines, since a bachelor degree in history for example isn't worth the paper it's written on. I'd also hold professor evaluations after their exams so the students can judge whether the exam was fair, which it quite often isn't, and create a comprehensive rulebook which would include simple and yet seemingly impossible requirements for the university, like no term papers due at the semester start and no automatic enlistments in exams without an automatic notification to go along. I would require every teacher to take a course on how to effectively teach. This would include strategies to make learning interesting, how to engage with students including de-escalation techniques, and how to be empathetic. They would also be required to take a refresher course every 2 years. Probably resign from the position as I am not qualified in the slightest to be Minister of Education. If I must actually do something, I would gather a cabinet of people who understand what is going on, what problems there are and how to fix it. Create a diverse council with myself as either a begery or a figurehead.